One of the most simplest things is a lie that's sold to people. Time is money, or freedom just comes from money. Because if you think time is money, then you're seriously limited on how much money you can actually make.
If someone was to come to you, they were seeking financial freedom, what guidance would you give them?
I think the key is to people constantly sacrificing today's happiness for tomorrow's profit, and tomorrow never comes.
How do you navigate that as you are having conversations with people and realizing that there's a mental component to self-sabotage or poor money behavior?
I'm a firm believer that there's no good and bad events, it's just events, and you're choosing to see one side of that, whether it's negative or positive.
What's required for people to realize that they're not actually chasing money? They're either chasing freedom or the feeling.
No one who even knows who they are, or they've got an idea of what is freedom because it's based on someone else's Instagram story. Being mentally free and knowing who you are and what you want in life, that's the first step. And the only way that we are happy in life is...
Jason Graystone, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, really pleasure.
Mate, when I saw your title, Helping People Achieve True Financial and Mental Freedom, I was like, this is my guy. So I'm excited to talk about both those things. But before we get started, can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what has got you to where you are today?
Sure, yeah. So I'm primarily an investor, and I've been investing since I was 22 years old-ish. And over the years, invested in various things, started various businesses, invested in various businesses, invested in the stock market, traded the stock market, traded financial markets, and yeah, just an investment guy all round. And it led me to where I am, where I was just seeing a lot of crap out there, basically sharing poor information around financial advice, let's say, and I decided to just openly share what worked for me, and that's what I've been doing for about 10 years now.
What was the poorest advice you've seen or that you continue to see? Because I would agree with you, but I'm no financial expert, so I'm interested in understanding your lens.
Yeah, I mean, look, we could probably talk about a week on like poor advice. That's probably about 10 different podcast episodes. But to be honest, like one of the most simplest things that I think is a lie that's sold to people. There's two really. Like time is money, and or freedom just comes from money. And those two things, I think people chase. They chase riches, thinking that that's going to get them to freedom, but they don't actually want the money. They want the freedom. They want their happiness. They want the contentness in life, and that doesn't necessarily come from money. And then the time is money thing is just like, if you, I grew up around people telling me that time is money, and the problem with that is it's a little bit flawed, because if you think time is money, then you're seriously limited on how much money you can actually make. And what I've seen over the years is people that subordinate to that idea, usually people who try and please and appease mum and dad. They go into some kind of profession, and then they cap out, man, at like there's a certain limit on their income where they go, do you know what? This isn't worth it. Like, I'd rather have less money and more time. And it's usually, you know, prolifically renowned in like doctors, like surgeons, you know, accountants, lawyers, that type of kind of traditional route, university route style approach. And I see it all the time. They cap out on the income, and they got so much pressure and responsibility at that level that they'd rather have more time. So the reason they got into that is because they started exchanging like an hourly rate, or you know, personal trainers, man. That's the way, like, you see it all the time. They charge £45 an hour, $45 an hour, and then there's like, you know, they're working every hour God sends, and they don't have time to eat themselves or train themselves, and they just end up burning out. So yeah, I think that's a you need to take that with caution, that advice.
Based on your time, I guess, in the industry, and no doubt having a lot of conversations, what's required for people to realize that they're not actually chasing money? They're either chasing freedom or the feeling potentially that money gives? Because like for me, that's been something that I've just kind of nailed over the last six years. I've been like, oh, people aren't chasing, but it's almost like you have to beat people black and blue, or they have to experience it themselves to go, oh, that's
Yeah.
not the answer. So what have you seen in your profession?
You do have to experience it because so what I experienced was when I got to about 29 years old, I was in a position where I didn't need to work, and it was pretty boring. And I spent a lot of time networking with entrepreneurs because I just wanted to get out the house. I started doing a lot of like, networking, accelerator programs, things like that, just to kind of learn really. And what I realized was I met people who were like born into wealth on these, and they had all the money in the world to do whatever they want, go wherever they want, and yet they were like drug addicts basically. They were so unhappy with themselves. They had no purpose or sense of direction. They were kind of like unanchored, like they were just floating in the wind, and they were unhappy. So I thought, well, okay, yeah, money, money doesn't buy happiness. And then I met people entrepreneurs who were like hustle, 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 great at earning money, amazing at earning money. They had all the skills to sell and they could continuously generate hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yet they had no money themselves. They had to do that every single month. And they were stressed and they were burnt out. And it was like, right, well, they're not happy. And then I met people who were like really spiritual, really happy and content in their own skin. They knew who they were. They were doing a job that wasn't really, they loved their job, but it wasn't really well paid. And then they were kind of limited on experiential freedom. They couldn't afford the things that they necessarily wanted in life, and they were unhappy. So I always think about, like you mentioned, that you have to kind of learn, and you do. It's a bit like when you tell the kid not to touch the hot candle, man. It's like they will have to touch it to actually believe you that it will burn them. But if you remember when you were 7 years old, what was you doing? You was probably out playing football or playing on your bikes or, getting an ice cream with your friends or whatever. And you had all the freedom in the world, right? But when your parents used to call you in at night and go, come on, it's time to go and have a shower. You got to go to bed, ready for school in the morning. You used to think, oh man, when I'm an adult, no one's going to tell me what to do. I'll have all the freedom in the world, right? And then as adults become adults, I see them become less and less free, and they move further and further away from who they were at 7. That pure, inspired 7-year-old kid, and they kind of end up here when they thought they'd end up here. And the reason they've done that is because they've taken a load of advice from people who and taken actions with that advice that are not aligned to who they wanted to be as a person. So there's this compound effect of lots and lots of series of decisions made, and with each of those decisions will stack up some resentment, a small amount of resentment, and then that's when people think, crap, how have I ended up here? This is not what life is about. And there was a time I went to Disneyland back in 2012, and there wasn't many phones about then, right? So everyone had these paper tickets, and we went up to the paper ticket, like the ticket kiosk thing, and this old boy who worked at Disney, he stamped our ticket and he went, go and be a kid again. And I just remember looking at everyone thinking that is all anyone wants. They just want that everyone here is so happy because they're going back to being a kid, you know? And the irony is we always have that inside of us, but the reason we don't still feel like that is because we've taken a series of decisions and actions that are not aligned with what we truly want out of life, whether that's pleasing and appeasing mum and dad, trying to impress some ex or some old boss, or whatever, putting someone on a pedestal and chasing something that isn't important to you because someone else looks like they're having a good time doing it. That is the lost world that we live in, and my goal is to help people get back to being who they truly are as that 7-year-old kid. I think it's important.
The way that I love the lost world, I've never kind of heard someone describe it as that, but the way that I would often describe it, the nature of this podcast, is a life by design or a life by default. And the life by default is essentially following the one size fits all system: 2.5 kids, white picket fence, stay in a job for 40 years, and then think that you get time back when you're 65 and your body doesn't function. So it sounds like you and I are very much on the same page. How does that conversation go down when you're having it with people? Because again, you know, even have you read the 5 Regrets of the Dying, Bryony?
I haven't.
Oh, dude. So one of them is like, oh, you'll love it. So one of the biggest regrets of so she works in palliative care, people's last 12 weeks. And she's written a whole book on the top 5 regrets of the dying. Literally, it is right in front of every single person, the 5 biggest regrets. And you and I are kind of on the same page, so we get it. But you've got people reading this book and then just being drawn back into them. You know, one of those top 5 regrets is I wish I was more myself. One of them was I wish I spent more time with friends and family. One of them is I wish I didn't work so hard. Like things that you and I are talking about here in this moment, and people can read the book and then go back. So that must be a really interesting dynamic that you find yourself in, because for some people they'd be in such pain that they'd go, okay, I'll listen to you. This isn't working for me. And then maybe for others, they're in such pain and they're like, oh, maybe I need the bigger, faster, shinier, hotter, etc. So how do you find that conversation unfolds when you're literally trying to scream from the rooftops about what a fulfilling free life looks like? And some people are like, yeah, I get it, I need to change. And then others are so systematically pulled into this narrative.
Yeah. I try and use like shock tactics to kind of like what I'm talking about now. You know, I use kind of, you know, remember when you was a 7-year-old, it kind of takes you, it instantly stops you in your tracks. And although I haven't read that book that you just mentioned, and I definitely will read that book, thanks for the recommendation. That is something that I've practiced throughout my life. I'm always conscious of being on the deathbed and really being like present in what life is actually about. And shock tactics, when I talk to people, I say things like, you know, man, I've got no goals. You know, I have 0 goals. I have no aspirations whatsoever. I just want to live every day like today. And when you say things like that, they're like, it's such a breath of fresh air that they want to go, how do you get to that? Because that's what they really want. They don't want to be chasing a goal. No one really wants to be chase, hustle, hustle, hustle. Although it's got some vibrancy and some energy, for most part, it's not a mission for most people. It's this slog of a goal that they're trying to get to. Whereas if it's a mission, it's very different. It's like you living your life and you're energetically, you know, putting messages out that are important to you. It doesn't feel like work. And that's the goal to me, to be in that position. And as you just said, not everyone is cut out for that. And I don't think the goal is to like break away and be your own boss necessarily. I think it's about optimizing your day for inspiration, like doing things that you enjoy, making sure you're in a job that you enjoy. And when you're in that job, removing or delegating tasks that are not inspiring and doing more of the things that are inspiring. You know, optimizing your day and the time in your day so that you're doing more of what you love, essentially, not scrolling TikTok or, you know, all this kind of stuff. So anyone can do it. You know, it just comes down to being mentally free, first of all. So knowing who you are. Everyone wants to be free. The problem is no one knows what they flipping want. You know, no one who even knows who they are. They're trying to be someone else, or they've got an idea of what is freedom because it's based on someone else's Instagram story or something like that. So being mentally free and knowing who you are and what you want in life, that's the first step. And once you know that, it's really then about building a vocation or an income that doesn't feel like work, like something you would choose to do or you'd be happy to do for the rest of your days, and optimizing for that. The beauty of the world we live in today is anything is monetizable. Like anything that you want to talk about or do is monetizable. And then the financial freedom element is just a tiny little piece in the puzzle of, because imagine being in that position, right? You don't then subordinate to the idea of retirement. You don't want to stop. You just want to live. So when you're in that position, the financial element is just how you manage your income to buy enough time into the future so that if you need to stop, You know, if you have an accident or you become ill or you need to look after a loved one, then you've got a runway of time there that you can stop. You can take your foot off of the gas. But really, you won't want to ever do that. If you've built your life right, you won't ever want to do that. So, yeah, mental freedom, mobility freedom is what I call that, and then financial freedom. Those three things, working on those three things and optimizing for those will make you feel free. They'll put you in the position that you want to be in. And you can do that whether you're in a job or whether you're an entrepreneur or a business owner.
I really understand now why your people spoke to my people in terms of getting you on the podcast, because you are speaking my love language. So it's like you are a great example of, it might be easy for a spiritual person to say, oh, don't chase money or whatever, but they've never experienced financial success, so they might lack a
Yeah.
kind of integrity or an embodiment of that piece. But for you, who could and did retire at 29, you're in a very different position to a lot of people, where you can speak firsthand to been there, done that. And again, if we come back to this social narrative, that sounds like the ultimate to a lot of people. Based on the narrative, you could have retired at 29 and had quote unquote freedom. But to your point, and I was literally doing research on this last week in terms of retirement and what percentage of people actually enjoy it, what percentage of people get bored,
Yeah.
what percentage of people want to go back into the workforce in some way, shape, or form. So what needed to happen for you at 29 for you to realize, oh fuck, this isn't actually that good, quote unquote retirement or whatever? Like what was that process like for you?
Yeah. Well, it was one of those freedoms. So yeah, I achieved this position where I didn't need anything, but the I guess I'd lost the fulfillment, right? So you only get fulfillment from helping people. So you only feel fulfillment from being useful, meaningful, helping other people. And I was in a position where, you sat there, you think, well, I've been chasing this for a long time. This is it. And then you realize that there's equal drawbacks to that being in that position, like too much time with your family, too much time with your wife. No humans want to spend every minute together. Everyone always says to me, oh, I want freedom. And I say, why? And they say, spend more time with my family. And my first question to them is, how much more time? And they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I say, well, how much time? Because if I granted your wish on Monday morning and I gave you all the money in the world and I said, look, you don't ever have to, you can spend every minute with your family now. What will happen is, if you haven't digested that and really thought about that, you will start to feel guilty because you don't want to be with your family every minute. And that's okay. But you have to stop putting out into the world these unmeasurable, unrealistic statements that you want to spend every minute with your family. It's silly. It's a polar opposite, because you are in a position where, like, you just want out of the position you're in, so you can't even imagine not wanting to spend more time with your family. Or it's the same as escapism on holiday, or drinking at the weekend, or drugs, or retirement is an escapism of being in a job that you don't like. So if you're searching for these escapisms, whether that be cocktails on a beach, retirement, holidays, drink, whatever it might be, the elephant in the room is, why are you trying to escape? Like, you've built a life that you're trying to get away from. That's the problem. Like, you can start optimizing that life so that you don't want to escape it, and then you don't have this feeling that you need to get away from it. So what I realized is, well, I started putting on weight. I was visiting the fridge every 5 minutes. My wife was out of the house doing errands or whatever, or seeing family. My kids were at school. My friends were all at work. I've just felt like meaningless. People start bickering, like start rumors and gossiping about you. What does he do? Is he dealing drugs or something? That kind of thing. And it's like, oh man, I didn't feel normal, but I didn't feel like I was providing any value to anyone other than covering the bills, and that was that, like, embedded in my mind, that covering bills, the financial element, is still not giving me fulfillment. It's not giving me the feeling that I want, which is all we want in life. We want to feel good. We want to feel happy. And so that's what I realized. I realized that fulfillment is missing. And the only way that we are happy in life is if we have fulfillment. And you need to feel useful to other people, I think, to get that.
So how did you how did you change the lens in which you saw work or your life after 29? And that my guess is that that must have been quite a shock because, from the age of say 22 to 29, you've had this goal, this vision, you've achieved it, and then it wasn't what you thought it was going to be, which is very common for a lot of people. So what needed to change for you? What did that process look like? How do you redirect uh, life after?
Yeah. Um, so what I started to do was I was coming from a place where I didn't need money, and I think that is key as well because when you're in a mental frame of mind where you're not chasing money, your energy changes and you start being able to um, you kind of magnetize people that want to really listen to you and they're invested in you. So I started basically just sharing all of my tips and tricks. I put out a newsletter. I started running this free kind of like live stream, what everyone watching me doing investments, doing my daily thing, and because there was so much crap out there, it became such a breath of fresh air that we built this community that people were just like, well, this guy. There was no negative reviews. Nothing. No one could say anything bad because I'm literally opening my playbook in front of everyone, and and I felt great because I could hit the pillow at night, look my kids in the eye, and think, everything I've shared today is something that I'm doing myself, which is so rare these days out on social media. And I just had this great sense of fulfillment, being able to help other people, them getting value from me, and it was a win-win for me. So I started sharing and sharing and sharing, and the funny thing is, the more you share from a place of not needing money, the more you attract money making opportunities. It's really, really strange. So I was giving everything away for free. I was like giving, like literally sharing everything. I started a YouTube channel, started sharing everything I was doing. And then these people get drawn to you and they're now asking, like, well, can you teach me this? Can you teach me more of this? And it's like, well, I was then in a position where I was like, I didn't want to create another job, but I wanted to make sure that I could serve as many people as I wanted, but without the limit on time, and I wanted it to be efficient. So I was forced into a position where I had to kind of make these educational modules for people so that they could come and get what they needed. And yeah, it's funny. That's what we did after that. We started developing these a series of educational products that people could go and buy, and it's been phenomenal. It's been an incredible journey. That was in about 2019. Yeah, so that yeah, amazing, amazing. When you can help people and get paid, that's even like it's incredible.
Well, really, I mean, simplifying that, there it sounds like there was a clearer and a cleaner um, opportunity to be of service, like really purified.
Yeah,
Have you ever heard of The Second Mountain by David Brooks?
no,
Ah, okay. I think you'll like this one as well. It ties in really nicely with your work. So he talks about two mountains. The first mountain is where a lot of society climbs, the independence, the accolades, the status, money, those type of things. And a lot of people stay on it. But he essentially talks about one of three things happening. You either continue climbing the first mountain and you stay on almost like the surface level kind of material life where a lot of people spend their time. You either have some catastrophic breakdown, midlife crisis, etc., and you reassess how you do things, or the third group have a level of success, realize that it doesn't quite hit the spot, and they start looking and searching for more in terms of, there has to be more to life. So what I really hear in what you're saying is the hitting the goals, realizing that maybe it wasn't everything that it was beat up to be, and you finding yourself on the second mountain, which is a much different place to come from, to be of service, exactly as you said, and the energy in which it comes from being so different.
Yeah, so the energy was not like I need to start a business because I need money. It was like let me give out, let me put real love and creativity and energy into what I put out and see what happens. There was a guy called Stuart Wilde. Do you remember Stuart Wilde?
Yep.
Yeah, so he did a seminar called The Master of Money, and he basically says like I'm going to show you how to make money, but it's not from like competing and scratching and clawing and beating your competitors. It's basically give out your love and creativity into the world, and then people start to show up as a result of the outpouring of your efforts into the world and your energy into the world. And that's really it in a nutshell. It was like I don't need any money. Let's just share everything I know and see what happens. And then people start showing up. And then he says, all you have to do when people start showing up is having an organized way to bill these people so that they get what they want and you get what you want. And yeah, what a remarkable way to do business and life.
Well, that's also it also really ties into first mountain versus second mountain. The first mountain's very much compete, compare me versus you, whereas the second mountain's very much collaborate, be of service. So you're speaking nicely to that as well. If you were to, someone was to come to you and they were seeking financial freedom, and you can take this whatever path you choose to, what questions would you be asking them, or what guidance would you give them?
If they're seeking financial freedom, usually that is their idea of what will give them actual freedom. But I would still take them through the same steps. I would say, what are you chasing? What do you want in life? What is important to you? What are your values? A lot of people don't know what that is. A lot of people don't know who they are. So, I mean, one exercise I always say, like, if you just go through your camera roll on your phone, over all of the years, you'll see there are moments of inspiration where you've chosen to take pictures of the same sort of thing. There'll be a common theme there, whether that's the mountains or animals or the kids or whatever, cars, football, there'll be a common theme there. If you combine that with questions like, if I was to ring up your friend and ask them what they would call you for, who are you the go-to person for? What are you the most reliable in? What would they ring you for when they need advice? What do you bring up in conversation most? What would you do Monday morning if you didn't need money? I always say, like, what would your business look like if you didn't need money? If you kind of ask yourself those questions and do the whole phone trick thing, you'll see a common theme, and that will be closely linked to what you're meant to be doing in life. That will be closely linked. And if you're off track from that in some way, then that's why you're going to feel a little bit more resentful. You're going to feel a little bit more off track. And then I would say, right, how do you earn your money? Do you exchange time for money? So you want to build something that allows you to do more of those things. How do you make your money? Are you can you make money from anywhere in the world, or are you tied to a geographical location? Can you serve one person in the same amount of time that you can serve 100 people? Is there a restriction on your time and money? Can you make the same amount of money in an hour? Is it possible for you to make the same amount of money in an hour as it is to make in a week, say? If not, then there's a resistance there. There's a friction there. Maybe we need to close that. This is if people run their own businesses. If you're in a job, it's like, how much of your day do you spend doing things that inspire you, and what are the few things that you would love to do out of that job every day? And then basically trying to delegate. Have you read 4 Hour Work Week by Tim
Yeah.
Ferriss?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that book from back in the day. The first half of the book is basically him trying to persuade his boss to work from home so that he makes his job mobile. Well, I mean, COVID and lockdown solved that problem for most people.
Mm.
Everyone now has the belief that you can work from anywhere. And the second half of the book is, once he's mobile, he then makes it passive by delegating, automating, systemizing his processes to free up his time so he can focus on the high value tasks. You can do that. You can do that in most jobs, most businesses, especially with AI now. Your job isn't going to be replaced with AI. you should learn how to use AI to optimize what it is you're doing already, and then you'll become a very valuable member of staff, and you'll be doing more of the things that you enjoy for the same hourly pay. So then there's that, and then how you manage your income. So when you get paid, we talk about this concept of paying yourself first. What that actually means is taking a portion of your income and putting it into investments that are going to compound and grow and forever grow towards your financial independence, and buying more time into the future should you need to. So how you manage your money is what gives you financial freedom. How you earn money gives you mobility freedom and this sense of, and to a degree financial freedom as well, because if what you're doing doesn't feel like work, and it's leveraged income and you're getting paid, then that to a degree is financial independence. And then your mental freedom, doing the things that you enjoy, is going to feel like you're financially independent, because you're getting paid as a result of being you, not someone else. So those three things, if you work on all three of those things, you will elevate your sense of freedom much faster than you will just focusing on money, or just focusing on a quick passive income stream, or a quick buck, or a cash grab, or just meditating under a tree. You're not going to get freedom doing that either. So just all three of those things I think are important.
You're one of the few people who, in the same sentence, has financial and mental freedom, or financial and mental. And one of the things that I found really interesting, as someone who formerly was bankrupt 7 years ago, was at the time, and there's been a few that have come through since. Lewis Howes has just brought out a book around the money game from a mental point of view, which is really good as well. But at the
Who's that
time,
by?
Lewis Howes, Make Money Easy.
Right.
Really good, because he brings kind of therapy into money, which is really good. But 7 years ago, when I was going through this and realizing that my money game from a mental point of view was really poor, if we've got skill set and we've got mindset, both of them were poor, but I was really kind of noticing my mental. When you enter a conversation, I can only assume that there's a large percentage of people that have money struggles from a mental point of view. How do you navigate that as you are having conversations with people, and realizing that there's a mental component to, self-sabotage or poor money behavior?
Yeah, usually it's linked to some event that took place as a child. So whenever, I'm a firm believer that there's like no good and bad events, it's just events, and you're choosing to see one side of that, whether it's negative or positive. And if you're seeing negative side of something, normally it's to do with some event that took place in your childhood, probably, that you labeled as a negative event. And the reason you labeled it as a negative event is because you couldn't see all the positives that came of it. So an example that, again, it's a shock tactic, but an example that I give is like, imagine you come home one day and you find your partner cheating on you, right? And it's like the worst thing in the world, and that's the worst thing that ever happened to you. And then after that, you have a little bit of a trust issue. You kind of fear dating, you fear men or women, and then you kind of slowly go out in the world. Anyway, 20 years pass, and I say, that thing that happened when you walked in back then, was that the worst thing that happened to you? And they say, no, it's the best thing that ever happened, right? But back then it was the worst thing, right? So how's it gone from the worst thing that happened to the best thing that happened? Because now I've met this person and we had these kids and we traveled the world and all that, right? So it was just a thing, but you saw the worst then, and now you're seeing the best. Imagine if it didn't take you 20 years to see that. Imagine if you could just see it instantly, and the way that you do that is to not have this fantasy about what it should be like, and just see the thing for what it is, and then try and see all the positives in it in that moment. And I know that's very, very difficult to do, but I'm using this as an extreme example. See all the positives in it, right? So when you fear something, when you're approaching money and you've got this, and you've had negative experiences that you labeled negative, maybe your parents were arguing about it, maybe your parents had a divorce over it, or maybe it caused a lot of upheaval in your household, or you saw someone lose their house, or whatever it might be. you might associate money with that. So if you haven't dealt with that and seen the positives to that situation, every time you acclimatize or you start to accumulate money or money is within your possession, you will subconsciously see it as a negative thing and you'll try and get rid of it. You'll try and disperse of it. And you see this with lottery winners. I mean, that's probably the most common example you could give when someone has this big windfall and they're not prepared mentally for it. They probably, the reason they're doing the lottery in the first place is because they are in a state of desperation and they want escape, right? So they're not doing what they love. They're not mentally free. They win the lottery, and all of a sudden, all of those memories, all those subconscious thoughts, oh no, I don't feel comfortable with this. I need to get rid of it. So they're thinking about everything they could buy. They could go and please people and buy friends, buy acceptance from their family. I am still normal. You know, I am still normal. Have this, have that. And they get rid of it. And then 9 months later, they've got no money and they're worse off because now they've got to, well, they've got to maintain this big snowball that they've just built. And that costs a lot of money to maintain. So I think the key is to really pinpoint any negative thoughts you have towards money and go and pinpoint why you've got those, and then try and see the positives in whatever situation caused you to have those negative thoughts. So if it was your parents arguing, you know, try and go back in time and think about all the positives that came from those arguments. Maybe you had better family connection because you had to, you had to work together a little bit more, or you was appreciative a little bit more, or, you know, you did with what you had, which made you more resilient. And, you know, you can really start to list a ton of benefits that come from these things until the point where you go, wow, you know, it wasn't negative at all. In fact, I wouldn't be where I am today had that not happened, and I'm very thankful for it. And the moment you can be thankful for something like that, the moment you dissolve that fear or that anxiety around money, because all anxiety is a unrealistic expectation of what your life should be like, based compared to your current reality, and usually that's skewed because you've got a warped perception of what your reality should be like.
So for you personally, did you find that you had much come up around money, or have you felt like most of the time you've had a pretty clean slate in terms of your own relationship with money?
Yeah. Yeah, my earliest memories. So I grew up. My dad had left before I was born. Me and my mum grew up on a council estate in South London, and we had no electricity. We had bailiffs knocking on the door for our electricity money. You know, I was babysat by like some renowned gangster in London and his wife while my mum went and tried to make ends meet and stuff like that. These were my earliest memories, and really what that I reckon that we value most what we perceive to be missing most as a kid. And for me, what was missing most is security. So all I wanted was security. I didn't even know what money was back then. But because I had security so high on my values that I then navigated life and found that money was a means to security. You know, having full control over how you make money is a sense of security. Building a stable life for my family gives you a sense of security, and that's what drove me. So whatever it is in your childhood can drive you the opposite way, to the point where it becomes a little bit unhealthy and obsessive. Like, I hate losing things, for instance. I hate losing things, and if I lose something and I know I've got it somewhere, I have to buy it immediately. Like, I'll go on Amazon and I'll buy it so I've got it the next day again, because you know, it's safe. It's back with me. You know, that's a problem that I've got. But going back to the question, they say, like, you know, there's that saying that, you know, good times create bad times and all that. You know, and I see that. I think because I didn't have anything, it drove me to create security. But then you've got the challenge of when you have kids, you want to give everything to them so that they don't have any struggle. Well, of course, what do they perceive to be missing most as a kid? Struggle. So what they'll value most is struggle. So they'll try to create struggle in their life because they've never had any. Right. So you see these kids that are entitled and they start taking drugs. They start, you know, kicking off and trying to be rebellious. You see this all the time. I mean, you see it in, you know, You see it in celebrities, you see it everywhere. So the juggle then becomes like trying to get that balance. And that's where I'm at now, to be honest. You know, I've got two kids that I've tried to bring up as best I can. I'm managing their expectations of what life should be like, and I'm trying to give them responsibility, and I'm trying to make sure that they don't uh, become entitled and things like that. So that's an it's fascinating, man. I love human psychology, but it's definitely something you can I wouldn't say master, something you can definitely work on and improve, but it's a never-ending puzzle, and I'm fascinated by it.
How old are your kids?
One is 20 and one is 17. So yeah, I had
Jesus, what
had
age did you have them?
yeah. So I found out this is what kicked off the journey. I found out we was going to have the first one at 22. I was 23 when he was born. That's what put the fire inside of me in the first place.
Wild. So are you 43? Have I got the maths right?
43, yeah, 43.
Fuck. So, I mean, probably you've done most of the heavy lifting, but how, because I've got a 5 month old, so I'm interested in, because I've had the same thought. I went to very prestigious schools, probably didn't feel like I fitted in, but I was always interested in the entitlement part, um, and the dance between wanting to give her everything, but knowing that that can backfire in a certain way. So, did you have kind of rules of thumb of how you navigated that? Because that's a really interesting topic for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love it as well. I've tried to bring up my kid. So the whole point is that it has to align with what I truly believe. So I'm always telling them that they need to be who they want to be. I've always
Mm,
told my kids to never look up to me, never try and please and appease me, never try and create what I create or follow my footsteps. Never. Like, I don't want you to ever look up to me at all. I want you to be who you want to be and do what's important to you. So my goal has been to, as they grow up, I know that they're both going to be polar opposites because siblings normally are, to identify what they find most um, intrinsically motivating, what
mm,
areas that they come alive in, and then guide them and slightly push them in that area. You know, not let them slack off, but support them in that area so that I can help them create a living from doing something that at least they were inspired to do or they enjoyed to do. And that's what journey we're on, man. That's what they're doing right now. Um, the other, and then from a very young age, what I used to do is I used to pick a job that I would hate to do, like, the whole garden or cleaning out the gutters or, jet spraying the patio and all that kind of stuff, right? And instead of giving them like pocket money, like if they wanted, I don't know, £20 for a computer game or something, for instance, I would say, I'll tell you what, I'll give you £150, but you've got to do this mammoth task, right? And if you do 95% of it or 98% of it and you stop, you won't get paid anything.
mm.
But if you complete it, you'll get paid. And it was fascinating because we used to do this a few times a year. And what you found was they appreciated that if you solve a big problem for someone, you get paid more without exchanging necessarily time for money because you could do it in an hour or you could take 3 days. It doesn't matter. I don't care. You'll get the same amount when you get paid. So you don't exchange time for money. The second thing that they realized was my son would like influence his brother to help him. Like there was one time when he was going to get this computer game, and he was like, "Look, if you help me rip up these carpets, when I get the game, you can play with me and we can play together and all this." So he's influencing other people around him to get on board with his vision of when he gets, this investment that he's going to make and all this kind of stuff, which was fascinating as well. And then the other point was there's always going to be jobs that are painful for other people to do that they don't want to do. And if you can create a service or a product to help them get that, then you'll get rewarded for it. So, and then when they got paid, then the lesson was to take a 10% of that and put it into a savings account. And that's what I instilled in them from a financial element. That's what I instilled in them from a kind of entrepreneurial element. Although, I'm not expecting them to be entrepreneurs, but I think that's a valuable skill to not exchange time for money. And then making sure that they're doing things that they enjoy, but still working hard. It's a real juggle, It's a real It's no one gives you a playbook on how to be a good parent, right?
Mm.
It's a very subjective thing. So I'm out here doing my best, and we've raised a couple of really great kids. You know, they're amazing.
So good. Mate, before we start to wrap things up, I'd be really interested in your definition of a life by design. What does that look like for you?
Definition of life by design: waking up every day, being able to choose what you do, where you do it, with who you do it, being completely aligned with your values and your priorities, and to be able to go anywhere and do anything that you want. Basically, that is the life by design. And I think the most important piece of that is to make sure that it is your life by design and you're not chasing someone else's life by design. So when people think about this, and you know, I talk about being always free, you talk about life by design. I think the danger of that is people have this idea that it is something outside of what they've actually got inside them already, and
Mm,
it's not. It's
mm,
something that comes from you, and it's not something you necessarily have to chase and find. It's something that's in you already. The trap is trying to make sure that you stay on track with who you are and not chasing something that's important to someone else. Just
mm,
a quick story. I was in Dubai last month, and there was a guy who was chasing like this next goal in his business, and he said, oh, the next goal for us is 50 million. And I said, that's a round number. You know, why 50 million? And he said, well, that's just the next thing, that's the next number, you know. And I was like, fair play, that's going to take a lot of effort and sacrifice from you. You might have to, you know, you might miss out on your wife, your kids, or whatever. Anyway, it turns out that really he's just chasing that goal to impress like an old boss or an ex or something, right? And I think, wow, he's now going to spend the next 3 or 4 years of his life sacrificing time to im as a slave to someone else's thoughts. And that is crazy. That's absolutely crazy because they don't care. You won't care when you actually get there because it's just you're not even doing it for you. You're doing it for someone else's thoughts. Um, so just be careful not to get on that trap because what you see is these people constantly sacrificing today's happiness for tomorrow's profit, and tomorrow never comes. Never ever comes.
I'm obsessed with this thought because as a parent and a recent parent, it's been really interesting, the provider part of wanting to do it for the family. But to your point, I think that is very honorable. And there's a lot of people that appear to be consciously, maybe not so much, but unconsciously doing it for another reason, whether it's the approval, often of their dad. But you must see that a lot, like doing the honorable thing, doing it for the family, but end up sacrificing their family for what they thought they wanted. You'd see it a
Yeah.
lot, I'm guessing.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that's the thing. All your family. I think trying to do things for your family, that's great to a degree. You should be doing things for you, and
Mm.
then when you do things for you, you then lead by example. People get inspired by being around you. Everything's happier. Everyone's happier. And if you can make sure that every one of your family can do what they want to do, then essentially you end up in this situation where everyone's appreciative for each other, and you know you just don't, I don't know, you don't feel like there's an imbalance of fair exchange going on. Like what I'll give you an example. When I stopped work, you know, I went from going out to the office all day. I could be in the office till midnight, 1 a.m., come home, and dad's the hero, right? Dad's the hero. He works hard. He's out in the office all the time. You know, great. He comes home. He could, I could go out for weeks at a time and come back and I'd be even more of a hero, right? Because dad's the hero. Like he goes out and works so hard. Anyway, when I didn't have to do that anymore, I have this office in my house. If I decided to go into that office for 10 minutes, all of a sudden it's like, oh, dad's choosing to ignore us, right? And it's like, how has that happened? Like I've spent years going out to work and like not seeing you all day. Now I'm here and I choose to go in the office for 10 minutes. I'm ignoring you. Like, what's going on? Anyway, it turns out that like it was this situation. This goes back to your earlier question of like, what is the reality like? We was in this position where my kids didn't know if they could talk to me or not talk to me. Was I busy? Wasn't I busy? It was like this gray area between home life and what I was now pursuing. And what we did in the end is we got this big whiteboard in the kitchen. We all took a colored marker and we said, right, write down throughout the week what you want to do. You know, what are the things that you want to do? Because it turns out that no one wants to spend every minute with everyone anyway. They all want to do their own things. So it's like, my wife was like, oh, get my nails done, go and see Thingy for a coffee, go and walk the dogs, do this kind of stuff, right? And then mine was like, right, I want to do this live stream. I want to do a newsletter and all this kind of stuff. And my kids were like, yeah, I want to play a computer game. And then I want to do some art or some creative or whatever. And then we was like, right, now we can put in family time. And we penciled in all the family time, and then all of a sudden you lose all this kind of uncertainty of, oh, when are we going to spend time together? Everyone's focused on what they want to do, and then you look forward to the times that you spend together. It's like, oh, we've got this family movie night or a dinner or a meal or, you know, and that kind of stuff. So that really helped for us. You know, it might seem regimented to other people, but it really helped, and it was a strange situation.
Mate, you're speaking my love language, because part of building a life by design in, I guess, my thought process and my method is designing your perfect week and then executing on it. And that's, you just spoke to it perfectly. For those that want to find out more about you and the work that you do, where's the best spot to send them?
I've got a podcast as well. So if you've got value from this, I guess the best place you can go is go to alwaysfree.com. Or you can go to jasongraystone.com. But either way, you'll be able to go and listen to the podcast and check out all the socials and YouTube channel and all the rest of it.
Yeah, beautiful. And I jumped on your Instagram as well. There's lots of good little nuggets there as well. So, mate, thanks for coming on. As I said right at the start, two topics that I'm really interested in: the financial and the mental freedom. And you speak to it really nicely.
Thanks, man. It's been a pleasure.